financial crisis recovery.
Foreclosure, short sales, bankruptcy, credit card debt, job loss, depreciating home values, money management. Peace of mind when it comes to your finances seems completely out of reach under current conditions, but there is a way to achieve it. For the next 60 minutes, you're going to find out how to cover your assets. Cover your assets.
That bankruptcy, like many other things, is an apples-to-apples comparison. It's pretty much all the same, and the less you can pay, the better off you are, and it's such nonsense. Number one, more often than not, you've got a practitioner who is learning on your dime, because if they knew what they were doing, they wouldn't be the cheapest person on the block. In nearly any business, you can look at the people who come in and charge much less than everyone else. What they essentially do is they ruin the business, because then the perception publicly becomes that you can do it for this amount of money. And the people who are doing that are people who are inexperienced, and if anything goes wrong, they've charged so little that they can't afford to go back and fix or represent or help you through that process. Once they go through the process and they become successful at it, well, then, of course, their pricing goes up because they understand.
Sure.
You know, so...
Well, it shouldn't be on any attorney's bucket list to be the cheapest bankruptcy attorney somebody can find. I mean, cheap is cheap, and you're going to get what you pay for. That's just the reality of it. Now, on the other hand, you don't want to be stupid and pay way too much, but any experienced practitioner among the group of people that do this for a living and do it well, they're going to be fairly close in terms of what they charge for their fees. Now, that doesn't mean that your case is going to be like your Uncle Bob case is or your cousin Mike's, because it's not apples to apples. My little analogy is they're a lot like snowflakes. You know, they look alike, but once you really look at them really close, they're all really different. And federal law, state law applies in bankruptcy to a certain degree, but it's going to apply differently in every case. It depends on what you bring to the table.
Well, the other thing I want to touch on is this whole free consultation thing.
Yeah.
And say that, you know...
Bane of my existence.
Yes.
Yeah.
And some of you who are listening to the show, you know I don't do free consultations, and there's a real specific reason why. As David said, most of the time, free consultations are going to be geared to do nothing more than to sell you to the next meeting, get you to pay the retainer, and move on. And to an attorney, they're oftentimes looking for nothing more than, can you afford to pay me, because I'm not going to waste any more time. And you're going through this consultation, and you're saying to yourself, well, you know, this guy ain't even listening to me. All he's concerned with is, how am I going to pay for the service? Well, you don't understand. That was what it was all about from the beginning.
Yeah.
So the reality is, when you're dealing with somebody who is desperately seeking their next client, you are their next meal, you are their house payment. And when you're dealing with somebody who has the volume of someone like David Kingsbury, you're dealing with somebody who doesn't need their next client to make their next payment. And consequently, they really can take the time and do a proper analysis of your case and give you a sense of what you can expect, not to mention the fact that when you're experienced, you know all of the things that potentially could happen. And, of course, everybody is going to see something come up that they're not anticipating. Yeah. That's always going to happen. But most often, they pretty much, somebody like David here has seen just about everything and which direction it's going to go, and is predisposed to how to deal with that when it comes up in court. And there's where the red herrings really are.
Yeah.
Right?
And listen, you're going to pay me $100 to come in and talk to me. That's I call it my tire kicker fee. It's to keep people out. That aren't real serious about it and aren't going to prepare. Because when somebody comes into my office, I'm going to do a good, thoughtful, careful case analysis for them. You're going to fill out some paperwork for me. You're going to bring in some documentation for me. We're going to have a conversation. It's going to take an hour and a half to 2 hours typically. It's not a 20, 30-minute consult light type of thing. By the time you leave my office, you're going to know how the bankruptcy laws are going to apply to you. If you brought in the information I need, right? Because if it's garbage in, garbage out. If you come unprepared, it's not going to happen. But if you get me what I need to do a case analysis for you, you're going to be more knowledgeable. You're going to have some options and hopefully a plan. Well, and by the way, that consult fee, that gets credited back to you. Like I said, it's my tire kicker fee. I just want to keep the people out that aren't real serious, you know. So
and the other thing about that is that when you walk in, if you are prepared, then you can always get much better answers to your questions. The problem, of course, is that you may not necessarily like what you're going to hear.
Yeah. That forthrightness, I've been, you know, some people have said, you're really blunt. I don't do anybody any favors if I tell them what I think they're looking to hear. And there are people who go from attorney to attorney to attorney. And when somebody calls me up and says, well, I talked to so-and-so, but I want a second opinion. I'm not real big on second opinions. And if I say, well, who did you talk to? And if they'll share that with me, and if I recognize that attorney, and I used to know all the attorneys in town, there's tons of them now, but if I know it's a good attorney, what am I going to tell you different? What are you looking for here? Because I know that person's probably gave you a good analysis, and I'll tell them straight out. If you're just looking for what you want to hear, I'm not your guy. We're going to waste each other's time.
The other issue is, of course, that may not be the bedside manner that they're looking for. And for some, for some of the folks who are out there, they're looking for consolation, and this is more a feel-good situation.
Right.
For you, you've probably, just like me, become somewhat jaded, and I just want to be real straightforward and honest with them and not have something come up later and they say, well, gee, why didn't you tell me that in the beginning? And, in fact, that's why you do it, and that's why often you're posed with the problem of having to tell them things they don't want to hear.
Yeah. Well, sometimes my bedside manner could probably use a little tweaking, but I think I service my clients better. I mean, surprises are no fun. People come to me because they're in a jam and they can't work out these problems by themselves. Otherwise, they wouldn't pay me to do this kind of work for them. So I want to make sure that they know from the get-go, this is what's going on in your case. I mean, really, a good chunk of what I'm paid for is my expertise, my knowledge base, because I've done thousands of these cases, and I can spot those problems. They don't always want to talk about the problems. They want to say, I just want to get my discharge. But you say, what about this? What about that? So we might need to approach it this way or that way. Not always comforting for them.
We're going to be back in just a moment. We're going to take a break, and we're going to talk about essentially what separates a good bankruptcy attorney from a not-so-good one. We won't call them bad. We'll just call them not-so-good, and try to draw out some of the things that a person might want to consider before they hire an attorney, just to give you some inkling of what separates, from a bankruptcy attorney's perspective, a good one from a bad one. Also, remember, you can go to our website, Cover Your Assets, which is www.cya21.com, and download the Financial Crisis Bible. Also, if you've got questions, again, give us a call at 651-646-8255. We'll be right back talking about what makes a good bankruptcy attorney from a not-so-good one. Welcome back to Cover Your Assets, here with David Kingsbury from Kingsbury Law, the most experienced bankruptcy attorney in Minnesota. How do you like that, David?
Sounds really good. Yeah, I'm up there, but I haven't been doing them since the Truman administration, but I've been around.
All right.
Yep.
Well, one of the things that we talk about on this show, and one of the things that I try to do personally, is to, when I'm representing a client and trying to give them guidance, I've always believed that it's important to be able to see both sides of the street, because it makes you effective on either side. If you know what the other party, if in that particular case your adversary on the other side of the table is thinking and what their concerns and considerations are, if you know those things, you can address those things in advance, or at the very least be prepared prior to that. So, with that, David, what are some of the things that you feel make an experienced bankruptcy attorney able to do that very thing?
Well, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I just recently attended a Chapter 13 Trustees, National Association of Chapter 13 Trustees seminar in New Orleans just about a week and a half ago, something like that. Very informative. It gives you a broad perspective, and you're rubbing shoulders with the Chapter 13s when they're sitting there at their education experience basically for the year, and coming up with their strategies for what they're going to bring back to Minnesota and spring on debtors in terms of how they're going to be managing their cases. So it's really important to know how the other side operates and what they do. Trustees are typically private attorneys. There's a difference between Chapter 7 and Chapter 13, and most of our cases are Chapter 7. But basically, they're looking, in Chapter 7 is specific, they're looking for assets. And some of them, they're all good people, but
let's qualify that.
Yeah,
a U.S. trustee is an attorney who, in essence, is really looking for the better interests of the unsecured creditors, which means, frankly, they're trying to get money from you. They want
to take something from you.
Yes, they're not your friends.
And you have to understand that's how they get compensated. It's one of the best motivators is greed, of course. And I'm not going to say they're greedy, but they every case that they get assigned, they get $65 for out of the filing fee that you pay to the court. Now, they can do these cases all day long. If all they get is $65, they're not going to do it anymore. So they're looking for assets, and there's about 3 different ways that they get compensated out of the bankruptcy estate from you, or money you transferred or assets to somebody else. But that's their goal, and that's what they want to do. And so, in terms of putting one of these cases together, exemption planning, and exemptions are simply rules in bankruptcy. Say, I got to protect a certain kind of asset up to a certain amount in value, right?
So in filing personal bankruptcy as a personal bankruptcy attorney,
right,
the U.S. trustee is in essence your adversary, and it's the other side over there. Maybe we don't want to say adversary, but we want to say that they are the ones that you're going to have to satisfy on the other side of the
typically
table.
That's it. And the thing of it is, you've got all your creditors out there, but they kind of represent them as a group,
right,
is the thing. And so